In today's lesson, we're going to talk about multiplying fractions. Now, multiplying fractions is actually easier than adding or subtracting fractions. And the reason is that because unlike adding or subtracting fractions, you can multiply two fractions with different denominators without doing anything to it first. So remember when we were adding two fractions, they had different denominators, we had to have a common denominator first. And same thing if we wanted to subtract two fractions and they had different denominators, they needed to have a common denominator first. But when it comes to multiplying fractions, we can simply just go ahead and multiply. So what we want to know is how do we multiply? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now to multiply two fractions, we simply multiply the numerators together and then we multiply the denominators together. So let's go ahead and actually multiply. So 1/2 times 1/4. We take the numerators first and we multiply them together. 1 times 1 gives us 1. And then we multiply the denominators. And so in this case, we're multiplying 2 times 4. And 2 times 4 gives us 8. So 1/2 times 1/4 is equal to 1/8. So our answer is 1/8. So now let's look at this visually. Now, another way of thinking about multiplication is that we want to know what 1/2 of 1/4 is. Now, when we see of in math, that always means to multiply. So let's draw a representation of 1/4 because we want to know 1/2 of 1/4. And 1/4 says that we take this whole and we divide it into 4 equal pieces, which we've done. And 1/4, remember the numerator tells us how much to shade. So this piece right here represents 1/4. Now we want to know what 1/2 of 1/4 is. So we're going to have to divide this 1/4 into 2 equal pieces because we want half of it. And when we're talking about fractions, we actually have to divide the entire fraction. We can't just divide a portion of it. And so now we've divided it into 2 equal pieces. And so now we can actually shade what 1/2 of 1/4 is. And we end up with this shaded region right here. And so if we look at how many equal pieces we now have, our whole has been divided into 8ths, or 8 equal parts. And so by counting these rectangles and then our shaded portion, we are left with 1/8. So we can say that 1/2 times 1/4 equals 1/8. Another way to look at it is 1/2 of 1/4 is 1/8. All right, is means equals. Let's try another one. So 2/3 times 4/5. So we want to know what is 2/3 of 4/5. Well, let's start by multiplying these numerators together. Okay, so 2 times 4, and that gives us 8. Then we're going to multiply the denominators together, which in this case is 3 times 5, and that gives us 15. So 2/3 times 4/5 gives us 8/15. And I'm going to show you visually, again, how that's true, because we got 8/15. So 2/3 of 4/5 is 8/15. So let's have a look at that. All right, so we're going to start by, this is our whole, and we're going to divide it into 5 equal pieces, because we're talking about 4/5. So we have each piece equals 1/5, and we have 4 of them. So this shaded portion represents our 4/5. Now remember, we want to divide 4/5 into 3 equal parts because we want 2/3 of 4/5. All right, so then that 2/3 is this portion right here. And we can see that we have 8 pieces of our fraction is now shaded. So the shaded area represents the 2/3 of the 4/5. So notice that if we count up all of the squares, then the whole has been divided into 15 equal pieces. And again, that represents our denominator. So this drawing shows the same as what we got with just straight multiplying, that we have 8/15, which is exactly what we had when we did the multiplication just the way by multiplying the numerators first and then the denominators. So we get that 2/3 of 4/5 is 8/15. All right, so let's try another one. Let's try 3/4 times 1/2, or 3/4 times 1/2. So first we're going to start by multiplying the numerators together, just like we did before. 3 times 1, and that, of course, gives us 3. Then we're going to multiply the denominators together, which is 4 times 2, and that's going to give us 8. So 3/4 of 1/2 is 3/8. So our answer is 3/8. Multiply 3/4 times 4. Now this time we're going to look at this visually because you'll notice that we have this whole number which doesn't look like a fraction. So how do we multiply that? Well, let's take our whole. Okay, we're going to look at 3/4 first, and we're going to divide it into 4 equal pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And since we're looking at 3/4, we're going to shade 3 of those pieces because remember that's what the numerator tells us to do. So this right here represents 3/4. Now if we multiply 3/4 by 4, multiplication is repeated addition, then we're actually going to have 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 3/4. So now let's draw that, and we're going to show them each 3/4 with different color. So this is 3/4, this is 3/4, this is 3/4, and this is also 3/4. Now notice in each of these, we have one blank space, which you expect because we're only shading 3 of the 4. So since each rectangle is divided into 4 equal parts, we have 1/4 empty. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to take each of these orange fourths, and we're going to fill up as many of these empty spaces as we can. When we do that, you'll notice that each of these becomes filled completely. So we have one hole, and one hole. This is empty, so we don't need that anymore. And so now we can see that 3/4 times 4 is equal to 3. 1, 2, and 3. So it's important to note that any whole number can be written as a fraction with a denominator of 1. So 5 can be written as 5/1. 8 can be written as 8/1. 32 can be written as 32/1. So it does not matter what the number is, it can always be written as a fraction with a denominator of 1. All right, so that's that can be really useful when we're trying to multiply fractions. So we could have actually rewritten this question as 3/4 times 4/1 because this 4 is understood to be over 1. We just don't write it that way. It's just simply a way that the most common form is to write it as 4 and not 4/1. So we would arrive at exactly the same answer after simplifying as we did when we just showed the visual picture. All right, so 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 1 is 4, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So you can see that we got the exact same answer as when we showed just the rectangles. Now the cows on a farm are fed 1/6 of a bucket of feed each day. The chickens are fed 1/3 as much food as the cows. So the important thing here is how much the chickens are fed, which is 1/6, and now they're the cows are fed 1/6 of a bucket. And it's important to be careful to read the question slowly and carefully because the chickens aren't fed 1/3 of a bucket. They are fed 1/3 as much as the cows are fed. So they are fed 1/3 of 1/6. So we want to know how many buckets of feed are the chickens fed each day. All right, so first we need to write this as an equation. So the chickens are fed 1/3 of the cows 1/6. All right, and again, what does of means? It means multiply. So we know we want to find 1/3 of 1/6. So let's go ahead and multiply our numerators. 1 times 1 gives us 1. And then our denominators, which are 3 times 6, which gives us 18. So we can say that the chickens eat 1/18 of a bucket of food each day. And that's your lesson on multiplying fractions.